ह्या खाशेल्या कार्यावळीत तुमकां सगळ्यांक येवकार. आज आमी वेगळी कार्यावळ इतल्याच खातीर करतात कारण गोंय सरकारान एक इंट्रस्टिंग गजाल केल्या. ती इंट्रस्टिंग गजाल कितें की काल म्हजे कडेन एक गॅझेट नोटिफिकेशन आसा आनी हें जर गॅझेट नोटिफिकेशन पळयलें जाल्यार गॅझेट नोटिफिकेशनाची इंट्रस्टिंग हेडिंग आसा की गोवा ट्रान्सपोर्ट एग्रिगेटर गायडलायन्स 2025 म्हणून. एग्रिगेटर गायडलायन्स म्हळ्यार कितें सामकें सामान्य भाशेक सांगपाचें म्हळ्यार एप बेस्ड ट्रान्सपोर्ट सिस्टम. ती मागीर टॅक्सीकूय लागू जाता, ती मागीर फाल्यां मोटरसायकलीकूय लागू जावपाक शकता, ती बसीकूय लागू जावपाक शकता. फाटलीं कितलींशींच वर्सां आमी एग्रिगेटर जाय, एप बेस्ड गजाली जाय काय नाका हाजेर तकली फोडत आशिल्ले. पयली फावट म्हाका एक असो गव्हर्मेंट डॉक्युमेंट मेळटा जाचेर हें हांव वाचपाक शकता की एग्रिगेटर गायडलायन्स म्हणून. हाजेर समर्थन करपाक, हाजेर तुमची सजेशन्स दिवपाक 1 म्हयन्याचो टायम आसा. पूण जेन्ना एप किंवा एग्रिगेटराचो प्रश्न येता तेन्ना सगळ्यांत पयलीं आमचे तकले भितर येता त्यो टॅक्सी. आनी एक प्रॉब्लेम आहा मोठो तो म्हळ्यार आज तुमी इंस्टाग्राम ओपन करात किंवा यूट्यूब ओपन करात. गोंया येवन वचपी कितलेशेच ट्युरिस्ट सद्याक आपलो अनुभव जेन्ना शेअर करतात तेन्ना टॅक्सीच्या नांवान आनी ज्या तरेन आमची टॅक्सीची सिस्टम सद्या गोंया भितर चल्ल्या ताच्या नांवान शंक मारतात. हातूंतल्यान तो प्रश्न सुट्टलो काय कितें? आनी एक गोंयकार म्हणून म्हजे तकल्या भितर आसा की म्हाकाय खूब फावटी दिसता की जसो हांव मुंबय गेल्यार किंवा बेंगलोर गेल्यार टॅक्सी वापरता तशी म्हाका गोंयाकूय वापरपाक मेळची. कारण खूब फावटी आमकां अशा एका जाग्यार वचपाचें आसता जंय चलोवपाक बेजार येता आनी जर अशी जर टॅक्सी मेळ्ळी आनी एफोर्डेबल जर मेळ्ळी जाल्यार खूब बरें जातलें अशें गोंयकार म्हणून आमकांय दिसता. तें हातूंतल्यान जातलें काय कितें? ह्या सगळ्या प्रश्नांची उत्तरां तुमकां दिवपा खातीर आनी हें नक्की ह्यो गायडलायन्स कितें आनी जेन्ना आमी एग्रिगेटर किंवा एप म्हणटात तेन्ना तातूंतल्यान आमच्या टॅक्सी चलोवपी भावांचेय इंट्रस्ट प्रोटेक्ट जातले काय कितें? ह्यो सगळी गजाली एक गोंयकार म्हणून म्हाका दिसता आज आमी लोकां मुखार दवरपाची गरज आसा. आनी तें आमकां विस्तारान सांगपा खातीर स्वता गोंय राज्याचे ट्रान्सपोर्ट डायरेक्टर प्रमिवल अभिषेक आमचे बरोबर स्टुडियो भितर आसात. सर, वेलकम टू आवर स्टुडियो. I know you don't do this very often, but I think the issue is such that we needed your presence in the studio. And at the outset, let me thank you for accepting my request and coming here. And we have put the whole thing on our video wall. It says Goa Transport Aggregator Guidelines 2025. So let me start with a very basic question. What are these guidelines? Why these guidelines? And why did you think of going around Goa, meeting stakeholders, because you are one bureaucrat whom I know, who has travelled across Goa, met different stakeholders, and finally you have come up with this. So let's start with that. Why this?
Yeah, firstly, thank you for calling me here. Why these guidelines? Because if there is any business that is happening in a state, there has to be some sort of a rules and regulations to it. Earlier we had an SOP as to how the aggregators can operate in the state of Goa. But as you can see that wherever you go in India or across the world, in many cities, app-based taxis are a matter of convenience. But even today we are not able to solve that problem. So we wanted to consult taxi drivers, understand what their concerns are, and also listen from the public what their issues are, and then try to solve this problem for the state of Goa. And that's why, with a broad set of consultations, we have come up with this transport aggregator guidelines.
The question is very simple. I opened my statement saying that even as a Goan, two major questions, and I think we'll delve deeper into that. As a Goan, even I would love to use taxis sometimes, which is very difficult right now. Once these guidelines come into force, will I be able to do that?
Yes, that is the whole intention of it. Yeah. Because most often the aggregator issue is always seen as a tourist problem. But in this presentation I can show you with data, and perhaps you can also speak to a lot of working women in the state of Goa and try and understand how much there is a need for app-based taxis for the local people living in Goa. So how do we address and balance that concern, the need for app-based taxis, along with protection to the drivers as far as the earnings is concerned. So that is the whole motive behind the guidelines.
So let's go to the first slide and please, oh, this is very easy slide, problem of convenience. तुम्ही पळोवपाक शकतात सुरवातीक ती फ्लायट आसा थंय कितलेशेच ब्रँड्स आसात. आज फ्लायटाचेर जर वचपाक जाय तुम्ही तुमच्या बोल्सांतलो मोबायल काडटात, इंटरनेटार वतात आनी तिकेट बूक करतात. हॉटेलाच्या बाबतींत आमी तेच करतात. जेवणाच्या बाबतींत तर आमी चडूच करपाक लागल्यात. केन्ना केन्ना म्हाका प्रश्न पडटा की इल्ले कमी करपा जाय काय म्हणून आमी. सो जेवणाच्या बाबतींतूय आमी करपाक लागल्यात. पूण जेन्ना लास्ट विशय येता टॅक्सीचो तेन्ना थंय एक नो कन्विनियन्स ऑफ एप बेस्ड टॅक्सीस म्हणा, म्हणजे ताजे सकयल कांयच ना, ब्रँडच ना कांय. सो अशी परिस्थिती भितर आमचें राज्य आसा आनी अशी परिस्थिती भितर राज्य आसतना तुमकां आमी नेक्स्ट स्लायडीचेर वतात. So please explain to us what this means, because there are two aspects to this slide. One is what is there on the left hand side, one is what is there on the right hand side. Please correlate and tell us what is this.
Yes, I have seen a lot of my friends in Goa. If there is a family of 4 people, I've noticed that each one of them has a car or a vehicle in the state of Goa. That's because I come from Andhra Pradesh, and when I was a kid or even today, you can just go out onto the street, you can take an auto and go to any place you want, or you can book an app-based taxi or an app-based auto. But here in the state of Goa, because general public do not have any convenience of booking an app-based auto or a taxi, they often resort to having private vehicles.
Yes.
And in order to avoid dependency on anybody, that my father has to drop me or somewhere, or my husband has to drop me somewhere, each one of them try to own their own car. So you can see from the right side statistics that overall in India, for every 1,000 population, if there are 246 registered vehicles, in the state of Goa, there are almost 4 times that of the vehicles.
Yeah.
Now, how does this impact our daily life?
So I think only children below 10 don't have vehicles as far as Goa is concerned. If we take the statistics, 882, and if you take the 1,000 population is the population. So it looks like only children who are below the age of 10 are not having vehicles right now. Every adult has a vehicle.
No, generally it is expected that the vehicular density in a state like Goa will be higher than that of India. That is because there is so much of...
almost 3 times higher.
But that is because there is so much of tourist footfall in the state of Goa. So naturally it is expected to be higher. But what I am trying to say is that we can reduce it and we can minimize the private self-driven roads. So therefore the problem of not having app-based taxi impacts each one of us on our daily life. So how does that impact is given as a pointers on the left side. So obviously with more number of private vehicles or self-driven vehicles will be on the roads, which leads to congestions and parking overflows. And where there are more vehicles, obviously the probability of road accidents also will increase. Then if you also look at some critical vulnerable sections of the society, like women, senior citizens, differently abled, for their work or for some other purpose, if they want to move from one place of Goa to another place, unless they have their own self-driven vehicle or somebody is driving them, it's not possible to move them. So more vehicles will also add more pollution to our air, and then it also can have an impact on the state because it's adding more pollution and traffic congestion. So all these things impact each one of our daily life. So that is what we wanted to show in this slide.
I love this next slide. And muddam म्हाका दिसता तुम्ही पळोवपाक जाय की taxi is not just a tourist problem, it is a problem of every Goan. आणि हांवें कित्याक स्टार्ट केल्लें, हांवें सुरवातीकच सांगिल्लें की आमी जेन्ना इंस्टाग्राम ओपन करतात तेन्ना आमकां हे एक्सपिरियन्सीस आयकुपाक मेळटात म्हण ट्युरिस्टांचे. पूण हांवें ताजे उपरांत आनी एक गजाल सांगिल्ली की म्हाका जर एक गोंयकार म्हण जर दिसता की हांगच्यान खंय तरी या आनी आज गाडी चलोवपाचो मूड ना जाल्यार म्हाका पर्याय ना. सो हो जो ही जी स्लायड आसा, इट इज अ व्हेरी व्हेरी इम्पॉर्टंट स्लायड. दिस इज अ व्हेरी आय थिंक द क्रक्स ऑफ एवरीथींग. म्हळ्यार जर गोंयकाराक जर टॅक्सी मेळपाक लागली जाल्यार आपोआप ट्युरिस्टाकय मेळपाक लागतली न्ही. आज ट्युरिस्टाक मेळटा, गोंयकाराक मेळना, पण फाल्यां जर गोंयकाराक मेळटा जाल्यार ऑब्वियसली तो एक्सेस जो आसा तो ट्युरिस्टाकय आसतलो. सो ऑन दॅट नोट सर आय विल गो टू द next very important slide. Sir, please explain this to us, because this is a government data and this is the most authentic data. So, and there are too many numbers here. Simplify this.
I just wanted to showcase how data can substantiate this statement that app-based taxis is a problem of every Goan and not just of the tourists. Now, if you look at the tourist arrival data in the state of Goa, both the Indian tourists as well as the international tourists, and if you consider their average length of stay, and if you assume that out of the duration of the stay, 25% of the stay duration will convert into one taxi trip. So the number of trips that we can generate is almost 1.32 crores. You can do this math and you will get the same figure. On the other hand, if we estimate a population of 15,70,000 for the state of Goa, and just take a very conservative estimate that 3% of Goans will use app-based taxi, which I think is very, very conservative. On every single day, then demand generated for the taxi trips will be much higher than the demand generated by the tourists.
It is almost 40 lakhs higher.
Yes. So
40 lakh more trips.
Yeah.
So if Goan start using the taxi service, there will be 40 lakh more trips, and it will be this plus this.
Correct.
When you look at the size of the industry, in as far as the quantum of the trips is concerned, so it will be 1 crore 32 lakhs 45,000 and 1 crore 71 lakh 91 tons. So almost 40 lakh trips more. Yes. Compared to the tourist demand, if locals start using it. And you are saying that if locals get access to such a transport service, that almost 65% of the trips will come from locals and only 35% will come from tourists. Yes. So that's the market size that we are stifling right now.
Correct. And I think traditionally we have been always looking at servicing the tourists. But it is also time and it's a necessity that if you look at the Goan economy, as much as tourism is important, industries are also important. Manufacturing is very important. So many women, so many workers keep commuting to various industries, various industrial estates. So therefore the demand is present. And this is some market that a lot of taxi businesses can tap into also.
हांव नेक्स्ट इम्पॉर्टंट स्टेटमेंटाचेर वता आनी तें इम्पॉर्टंट स्टेटमेंट जें हांवें म्हज्या ओपनिंगाक रेज केल्लें की आमकां भंय दिसता कारण आमकां गोंयकाराक सुद्दां भंय दिसता कारण आमचे जे टॅक्सीचे भाव आहा ते गोंयकारच न्ही सो तांचेरूय अन्याय जावचो न्ही ही आमची प्रामाणीक भावना आनी थंय येता की फाल्यां एक एग्रिगेटर येता तो स्वताची कमिशन ना म्हूण इतले मारता की एक्चुअल जो फायदो जो खरेंच रस्त्यार हार्डवर्क करपी त्या टॅक्सी मालकाक किंवा त्या टॅक्सी ड्रायव्हराक जावपा जाय तो जायना आनी ताजो एक बरोच व्हडलो कट जो आसा तो एग्रिगेटराक वता ही एक प्रामाणीक भंय हो सगळ्यांच्याच मनां आसा ह्या गायडलायन्सांतल्यान हो जो फॉर्म्युला सरकारान काडला तातूंतल्यान ह्या भंयाचें निस्तारण जाता काय कितें तें पळोवपा खातीर सर एक्सप्लेन दीस तुमी एक यू हॅव क्रिएटेड अ फॉर्म्युला this is present situation. Correct. This is you are explaining us the present situation, and the next slide is going to tell us where we are moving with these guidelines. Correct. So please tell us what is this slide.
So you have seen the most important statement again. It is that most of the drivers face that insecurity that their earnings will be cut. It's like the gig economy. Now you see there are some drivers who just take a loan, who purchase a car, and who are doing all the hard work on the roads. But then suddenly an aggregator comes into business, and then their earnings are almost at a risk of being cut by 30%, 40%. So that directly impacts the livelihood of the driver. And it is not a problem in Goa. You go anywhere across the world, even if you go to Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, and if you speak to a common driver in a very common language, they are all doing it because they are in a helpless situation. They are all doing it, but they are very dissatisfied by the commission cuts. So in this slide, we are trying to explain how that commission cut can affect the earnings of the drivers. So for example, if you take a Swift Desire car in Goa, the rate fixed by the government is 36 rupees per kilometer. And let's say you take that Swift Desire car and you do a 10-kilometer journey. So you go to a taxi stand, and if you hire that car, you pay the driver 360 rupees, which is government notified fare. And the government gets the full 360 rupees as per the government notified fare. But let's say there is an aggregator ABC and there is an aggregator PQR. Can you please go to the next slide? the same aggregators today, in order to compete with each other, in order to attract more people to click on their apps, they are offering the same taxi services at a much lower rate of 250 rupees or 280 rupees. And on top of it, they take a commission of almost 100 rupees or 80 rupees, which is very exorbitant. And the driver sometimes ends up earning as low as 15 rupees per kilometer or 20 rupees per kilometer. Next slide, please. So you can see that this is the insecurity that the taxi driver has.
This is what happens in the present scenario.
Correct. And when we went and met a lot of taxi drivers.
So this area becomes a problem area.
Yes.
This is the problem area. When this commission factor of the aggregator kicks in, this is what percolates down.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is not a problem in Goa. This is problem in across.
But you are saying now that you have solved this problem.
Yes.
And that will be an interesting thing to see, and it is the next slide, how you have solved this problem and whether it is practical. So you are saying you are trying to balance passenger convenience and driver earnings. And it is a very tricky job, sir. And let's see. How are you going to do this? So the solution that, I like the title of this slide. It starts with solution. So please.
So if you look at the solution, there are three key components in this solution. One is that we are saying that if any aggregator wants to come and do aggregator business in the state of Goa, they can only aggregate the taxis which are registered in Goa and having a valid taxi permit in Goa. That is the first condition. The second condition is the drivers should, in addition to having their driving license, should be authorized to drive a public service vehicle as per Rule 4 of Goa Motor Vehicle Rules. The third important condition is that they should pay the driver whatever the government has notified as the fare per the trip. So that is the most important.
In this case, it is 36 rupees is
an example.
The notified fare.
Yes.
Nobody can come below that.
Yes.
A driver cannot get even 1 rupee below that.
Below that, correct.
The aggregator has to pay.
Correct.
36 rupees per kilometer.
Correct.
To the driver.
Correct.
So now, sir, if we apply the same formula, this is what happens.
Correct. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah. So if this is what happens, and I have a couple of questions here. Okay, so first you explain to me, then I'll ask you the questions.
So if we go by that idea that aggregator has to pay the driver the government notified fare. So if a 10-kilometer trip is completed under ABC aggregator or a PQR aggregator, it means that driver legally is entitled to receive 36 rupees per kilometer.
Yes.
And whatever commission they want to charge over and above that commission, that is up to the aggregator to levy on the customer. And now what happens is that it's a very microeconomics basic principle that every person in the market will make the choice towards the lowest price. So if there is one aggregator who is giving me 360 plus 30 and another aggregator who is offering me 360 plus 20. So customer will automatically make a choice to book the lowest price. So therefore the price for the customer will automatically be market regulated, whereas the earnings for driver is as per the government notified fare.
I have a very interesting question. I will just go to the next slide. So you are saying you have solved this problem that we had shown, which solves this problem. Now, so the question is, I have 2-3 questions here. The first question is the first column, which says taxi without app. So government is providing an option to the existing taxi owners and drivers to stay out of the aggregators, right?
Yes.
So they have an option.
Yes.
That option is not taken away.
Yes.
Government is not saying that compulsorily you have to come on some or the other aggregator. An individual can choose not to be on any aggregator.
Yes.
The second question, sir, is about aggregator 1 and aggregator 2. In our previous slide, we saw that 100 rupees, 80 rupees fat commission.
Yes.
Now, you have completely put that commission on diet.
Correct.
And brought it down to 30 and 20 rupees.
Yes.
Why do you think any aggregator will agree for this?
Why? Because the volumes in Goa are very high. And if you go back to the data, I told you that the tourists are generating around 1.32 crores. But that too, we are assuming that only 25% of their stay days will convert into a taxi trip.
It's a very conservative figure.
So if 50% of their stay days convert into a taxi trip, then that's going to become 2.6 crores.
Yeah.
And if 5% of the tourists, locals use the taxi,
Local population.
then it is going to go to 2.6 crores.
Yeah.
So therefore, volumes are very high, and therefore, definitely aggregators would want to tap into this market. There is a second important factor that Goa is an international brand, and multinational companies would want to come to Goa and to do services
brand
here,
presence.
so that they can show their brand presence. And you can see as far as the hotels are also concerned. So there are so many apps which are providing app-based booking of the hotels.
Yes.
So therefore, definitely the app-based
We are not reinventing wheel here.
wheel here.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the third question, and a very important question is, what if now aggregator 1 is charging 390 rupees, aggregator 2 is charging 380 rupees. What if the taxi without app starts charging 390 rupees because he doesn't have to pay commission? He says this is the market. So why not charge maybe 370 or 380 rupees? What happens to me as a consumer then?
No, see, that is an enforcement issue. So if such kind of an pricing is being done by a driver, then obviously that becomes an enforcement issue. So as a passenger or a customer, somebody can raise a complaint against that, and then normal enforcement activity takes place. That is irrespective of whether these guidelines exist or not.
Yeah.
See, even today also, forget the guidelines, forget the aggregators. Even today also, if somebody is charging over and above what the government has notified as a fare, then it becomes an issue of overcharging.
Right now, it is becoming an issue of very horrific reels, and that's ruining our reputation across the world. If, sir, this is the case, do you think, if by going conservative estimates, how many aggregators can survive in this market? Because at the time, at this present time, we have around 2 aggregators operating in the market. With this, what is the scope and size of the market that you are envisaging?
I think the market is big enough, and I think there is a huge potential for a lot of aggregators to come in. And more than the aggregators trying to see this as a business opportunity, the question that we need to have is, as a taxi driver, what do you want to do? Because you have purchased a taxi, and your taxi is like your factory.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask an industry person that you shut your factory and you wait for an order, then obviously he will not be able to break even. So only when the factory is running, you will be able to make money.
Yeah.
So therefore, any taxi driver who is very keen on making money and who is very keen on breaking even would want to find customers more actively. And it's a very common sense thinking that if you keep your vehicle stationary at a location and expect the customers to come to you, it's never going to happen. But if you can show the presence of your taxi availability on an app, then probably you could get 3-4 extra customers in a day, which will help you get more monthly income and which will help you break even and also give you profits. So I think it's more to do with what the taxi drivers want.
Yeah. And this is a very interesting slide. Taxi A asa, taxi B asa, taxi C asa. Taxi A does not want to use any app, is still earning government notified fare. Second taxi uses only one app. It is there only one aggregator. It still earns government notified fare. And third taxi is on multiple apps, and it is still earning government notified fare. So before I move on to the next slide, so I have a very simple question. Who fought on this, as far as the notified fare is concerned? The argument that is put forth even in our studios by the taxi associations is the market decides the price. Like for airlines, if you want to visit Goa in the month of December, January, the prices will be high. Same with the hotels. Why are we not extended that kind of a facility is the question they usually ask. How do you respond to that?
See, you can't compare apples and oranges. Obviously, flights cannot be compared with cars. Hotel rooms cannot be compared with cars. Because, let's say, for example, if 5 people are coming to Goa today, and if I have 3 rooms, I cannot increase 3 rooms to 5. Or I cannot ask them to take it on rotation basis. But if I have 2 cars, I can do multiple trips and service all the 5 people. So therefore, it's not about, that we have a capacity constraint. The taxi trips frequency can be increased depending upon the tourist footfall or increase in the demand for the taxis. So therefore, you cannot compare flights with taxis.
Now I'll ask you a question from the consumer's point of view. Suppose the aggregators decide that same thing. I go back to the previous slide. It is 360 rupees per 10 kilometer. Now assume we are in December and the aggregator decides why 360. I will take this to 600 or I'll take it to 700 because it is a tourist season. Is that aggregator allowed to do that? Now I'm asking from a consumer's point of view.
No, we will have to keep that also regulated. And I want to also, make you also realize that this is just a draft guidelines.
Yes.
And of course, will be taking a lot of inputs and suggestions. We are aware of the fact that surge pricing is also an issue. And we will put necessary safeguards to ensure that customers are not overcharged during tourist season.
But what you are essentially telling me, sir, is that the earning of the driver cannot come below this.
Correct.
You are saying as far as the surge pricing is concerned, market forces may or may not decide at the end of this exercise. Yes. However, one thing that is an absolute certainty is the earning of the taxi driver.
Correct.
That is not going to come below that. Correct. It can go above this, but it cannot come below this. That is the certainty you are very in clear terms telling us today.
Yes.
So let me go to the next slide. And this is very important. Again, the solution. So when it comes to aggregator, because I was thinking about our motorcycle pilots also. We have a unique tradition of motorcycle pilots. And if you ask me, I would love to travel with a motorcycle pilot. Because since my childhood, I am attached to many. I have traveled with many. And even, but as you rightly said, what happens is if you are stationed at one point, it becomes difficult instinctively to say that I'm going to travel with a motorcycle pilot today. If I'm getting down from a bus, it becomes easy. But if I'm somewhere in Porvorim, I will say, where will I get a motorcycle pilot or a rickshaw wala now? So can this be expanded to include them too?
Yes, of course, because that's the reason why we have named it as Transport Aggregator Guidelines and not Taxi Aggregator Guidelines. But as you can see from the previous slide, the guidelines do not say that everybody has to use app. It gives absolute freedom to the owner of a vehicle or a driver to choose whichever mode of service delivery they want. Yes. So even if the bikes want to make leverage of this guidelines and want to find more customers, so they can also use these guidelines and there's absolutely nothing that is stopping them from.
Sir, you have conducted a lot of consultations, but before that I'll go to the incentives, because consultations, and then there is a very interesting slide की तुमका actual भाडे कितले पडटले. हे हाजी एक बरी इंटरेस्टिंग स्लाइड आसा जी पळयतगीर म्हाका सुद्दां हांव जेन्ना ती वाचली तेन्ना हांवें म्हाका कच्च जालें की इतली तुगेले ह्या प्रायसा भितर हांव पॉयंट ए सावन पॉयंट बी ट्रॅव्हल करपाक शकता काय म्हण. पण ती स्लाइड आमी तुमकां एंडाक दाखयतले कारण that is the most interesting slide. So we are keeping it, we are saving it for the end. But before that, there is a very interesting thing is about the incentives. Now, जे आमचे टॅक्सीवाले आसात किंवा मोटरसायकल पायलट्स आसात, तुम्ही तांचे खातीर incentives तयार केल्या. Sir, please explain to us what these incentives are.
See, firstly, the incentive is to encourage, see, whenever you present something new to somebody, even if as a person, if you have to access something new in your life, you would always have some sort of a hesitancy. But when we know that the new solution is a good solution, we have to give some sort of an encouragement for adoption of that new solution. So these incentives were also designed in keeping that in mind and also understanding the needs of the taxi drivers. So whoever is completing at least 500 trips in a year on an app will be eligible to avail vehicle insurance of up to 50%. And also it is mandatory that the aggregator should provide health insurance to the taxi drivers.
The aggregator should provide.
Yes. And it is up to 10 lakh rupees with the current financial year as base year, and every year it has to increase by 5%.
The cover has to increase by 5%.
5%.
Okay.
Now, another important aspect of it today is that we need to focus upon inclusion. And therefore, we felt that this is an opportunity not just to bring taxi drivers onto the app, but also to encourage female taxi drivers also to come into this business. And therefore, to encourage them, we are providing 1 lakh subsidy for purchasing an electric vehicle, and even the annual insurance health cover is up to 100%. Sorry, annual vehicle insurance is up to 100%, and the annual health insurance, which is provided by the aggregator, not only covers the female driver, but it also covers the children and the parents of the female driver. So these package of incentives are designed to kind of give some sort of an encouragement and also
Very
an
attractive
assurance.
and tempting. Let me ask you just one clarification. So a taxi driver or a taxi owner chooses not to be on any aggregator, he doesn't get this.
Of course.
He gets it only if he comes on the aggregator platform.
Yes.
And for female drivers, I think, sir, I'm focusing only on two things. You're saying annual vehicle insurance up to 100. So the government will take care of 100% insurance cost.
Yes. Or 30,000, whichever is the
whichever
lowest.
is lowest. And second is health insurance. Here it is only to the taxi driver.
Correct.
So as far as female drivers are concerned, it covers parents and children as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So these are very, very attractive. But एक गजाल लक्षात दवरा. तुम्ही जर एग्रीगेटराचेर आयले ना, हे तुमकां मेळची ना. ही मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टंट गजाल. सो जस्ट बिकॉज आज जर तुम्ही टॅक्सी ड्रायव्हर आहात हे तुमकां सरकार दिता अशें धरून चलनाकात. तुम्ही जर एग्रीगेटराचेर आयले हे सगळें तुमकां मेळटलें. तुम्ही जर एग्रीगेटराचेर आयले ना, तुमचो चॉयस तुम्ही आता चल्ल्यात तशें चलपाचें. बट तातूंतल्यान म्हाका नेक्स्ट सर हे जे फोटोग्राफ्स आसा दीज आर द photographs regarding the consultations you have carried out in different parts of Goa, which I mentioned previously.
Yeah.
And then I am coming to the most interesting slide. जाचेर खुबश्या गोंयकारांचो विश्वास बसचो ना, पूण आमी विश्वास हाजेर दवरचो काय ना हें हांव तांकांच विचारतां. सर, प्लीज मेक मी बिलीव. It's very difficult for me as a Goan that you are telling me hatchback tourist fare, small hatchback. So are these the minimum prices?
Those are the government notified fares.
Minimum prices.
Yes. Per
Nothing
kilometer.
can come below that.
Correct.
So if I use a SUV also or a MPV, it cannot go above. It cannot come below this.
Yes.
During maybe the surge pricing or season, things can fluctuate, but it cannot come below this.
Yes.
So this is for the taxi wala.
Correct.
And you are saying the weighted average of the taxi fare is rupees 32 per kilometer.
Correct.
Now, हे टॅक्सी भावा खातीर जालें. सो हाजेर विश्वास दवरप पयलीं कठीण जाता. आतां सामको विश्वास दवरप खंय कठीण जाता ती हांव तुमकां नेक्स्ट स्लायड दाखयतां. सर, प्लीज मेक मी बिलीव अगेन. यू आर सेइंग इफ आय ट्रॅव्हल फ्रॉम मोपा टू पणजी,
Yeah.
I'll have to pay only 1,487.
Correct.
You are saying if I'm traveling from Dabolim to Panjim, I'll have to pay 1,067. Panji to Margaon, 1,296. And Panji to Palole, 2,173. Vasco to Kalangut, 1,525. Sir, please make me believe how, when as a Goan, I'll be able to avail this.
No, I don't need to make you believe. You can just calculate it from whatever rates our government has given. So if you go back to the previous slide,
Yeah.
We have calculated the average taxi fare by using the weights of each category of taxi. For instance, 0.53 into 29, and similarly, if you calculate,
Yeah.
you will get the average taxi fare to be 32 rupees per kilometer. Now, if you come to the next slide, there is a GST of 5% on the taxi fare.
Yes.
So that is levied. Now, on top of it, if you consider globally and nationally, the standards, the commission rates are roughly in the range of 12% to 20%. So if you take an average aggregator commission of 12%, it comes to around 3.85 rupees. There is 18% GST on that commission. So the total cost comes to around 38 rupees. Even if you assume that the commission is slightly higher, it won't be more than 40 rupees or so. So therefore, a distance of 39 kilometers, you just have to multiply it with 38 rupees and it comes to 1,487 rupees, which is a very reasonable cost.
Which is
of
very
travel.
reasonable. That's why I said, sir, please make me believe, because this is, we Goans are not accustomed to this kind of pricing. Mathematically, it looks very possible. My question is, there is another query that is time and again raised by our taxi operators, and that is about the return fare.
Correct.
We always say that I am going from Kalangut to Vasco or Vasco to Kalangut, and if I charge only 1,525 rupees, should I come back empty from Kalangut to Vasco?
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's because when they go to Vasco, they won't be able to find any passengers. Typically, they are only focused on finding tourists.
Yeah.
So therefore, they have this mindset that I have to come empty back to Kalangut. But if you are on an app, and consider that if you are not just on one app, but if you are on multiple apps, and you went to Vasco, and after dropping somebody, maybe from nearby Vasco area, somebody is making an app-based ticket booking. From Vasco, you can again drop them to Margam. And let's say you find another customer from Margam, you can bring them to Fonda. So let's say you find another customer who wants to go from Fonda to Mapsa, you can again do a complete circuit of such trips. So therefore, the fear of not finding a passenger on a return trip will not be there when your visibility is there on the app. So that is something that as a driver, taxi drivers also have to
One thing,
appreciate.
sir, I can assure you, if these are the prices, the percentage of Goan population using taxi service in Goa will be much more than 5%. If this is the pricing. If you are asking me to go from Panji to Palole at this pricing, I think the percentage of Goan population using the service will be much higher than 5%, because these are very reasonable. Again, as you rightly said, this doesn't affect the earning of the taxi
Yes.
operator.
Yes.
At the same time, as a consumer, I feel quite comfortable with this pricing.
Correct.
So it's really a win-win kind of scenario if this becomes a reality.
Correct.
My last two questions, sir, and again, I'm asking this from a taxi operator's point of view.
Yeah.
How is this, and this is a very basic question,
Yeah.
more profitable for me than what I'm doing right now?
That is because you are getting an assured return on per kilometer. And we have done some estimates, and we have also consulted some taxi drivers. So if you calculate it based upon the earnings that they will get, based on the government notified fares, even if a taxi driver is able to cover 100 kilometers as a trip distance per day for 26 days in a month, or let's say 312 days in a year consistently, the monthly income will definitely be in the range of 45 to 50,000. So that one thing that the taxi
Monthly
driver,
income, you are saying the pure profit.
yes, I mean like by after deducting all the fuel charges,
All everything.
maintenance,
Yes.
EMI cost, everything,
Yes.
it can still come to around 45 to 50,000 if you are able
so
to.
net 50,000 profit.
Correct. If you are able to do at least 100 trips, 100 kilometers per day.
Yeah, which is
If you are
very,
able to
very believable.
Yes,
Yeah,
do 100 kilometers per day.
And if you are servicing a local, and if you are doing the complete circuit as you rightly explained, or if you are servicing a tourist,
Yeah.
it can be much more than 100.
Yes. So now it is up to them as to how much they want to work. But this is something that even they can also calculate. And I must also tell you, during my interactions with some of the taxi drivers, some of them have told that if these guidelines come into force, they are ready to give in writing that they will come on the app. So that sort of an awareness is there among some drivers. And I think it will be truly beneficial and empowering to the taxi drivers.
Yeah.
And at the same time, providing that convenience to the local Goans and reducing the vehicular density on our Goan roads, thereby reducing accidents and fatalities and making the roads safer, less polluted and cleaner. So these guidelines, I therefore feel, are something that concerns every single one of us.
Single one of us. And sir, thanks a lot. It is very rare that an IAS officer makes an attempt to come to a studio and explain the entire scheme of the government to the general public, but this is very critical, very important considering the phase and the PR that we are getting right now. I think this is a win-win for everybody. It's a no-brainer. आम्ही फक्त गोंयकार म्हणून एज अ कंज्युमर म्हाका दिसता आमी दोळे धापून घेतले आनी टॅक्सी भावांनी बी आतां जर ही सगळी स्कीम जर पळयली जाल्यार ना म्हणपा खातीर हातूंत कितें आसा हें सद्याक तरी म्हाका कळना. सो त्या दृश्टींतल्यान एक अशी गजाल सरकार करपाक सोदता जी टॅक्सी भावांच्याय फायद्याची, गोंयकारांच्याय फायद्याची आनी ट्युरिस्टांच्याय फायद्याची. आतां जर सगळ्यांचोच हातूंत भितर फायदो जाता जाल्यार ताका ना म्हणून आमी नुकसान कित्याक करून घेवया. ह्या साद्या सोप्या प्रश्नाचेर हांव थांबता. सर, थँक्स अ लॉट वन्स अगेन फॉर कमिंग टू आवर स्टुडिओ अँड एक्सप्लेनिंग दिस टू अस. I said make me believe. It is very difficult for me to believe this at this point of time, but I hope you succeed in your mission. This becomes a reality. And one thing I can assure you, most of the Goans will wholeheartedly support you in this endeavor. So thanks a lot once again.
Thank you.
पळयत रावात प्रुडंट. नमस्कार.